Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your break. Did you know that solar-powered food was actually a thing and that it is great news for our energy and climate transition? Agriculture is currently Europe's second biggest emitting sector, right after energy. It is also a major piece of the puzzle when it comes to driving sustainable change. As the agricultural sector holds an important resource to produce renewable electricity, it also holds an important resource for our modern life, land. And agri-solar is a rapidly expanding business model, very innovative, which enables us to move away from the traditional land use competition towards new paradigms, which are based on synergies between agriculture and renewable energy. To support the uptake of agri-solar, it is essential to ensure that these installations are respectful of the environment and propose win-win solutions for farmers and for solar developers. For this reason, I'm very proud and excited to moderate this session on Solar4Agriculture. We will also release at this occasion SolarPower Europe's first agri-solar best practices guide, which you will find in the chat in the next minutes if it's not done yet. For this exciting panel, I'm also very happy to have thorough experts about agri-solar, which are joining us from all across the world. And I think I can say that indeed, because we're going up to Australia for this session, covering the full spectrum of our Earth, and having even a guest which is speaking to us from nighttime. So, hi, Anna. Maybe I will start then by introducing you. I think you're ahead of us in time as well. So really happy to have you with us, Hannah Freeman, which is Policy Director for Clean Energy Generation at the Clean Energy Council from Australia. We also have the pleasure to welcome Eva Van Dest, which is Head of Public Affairs for Amaranco, but most of all also our chairwoman and the chairwoman of our Agri-Solar workstream. Eva has driven all our work for the past 2 years very successfully, and very happy to have you here with us. We also have Alessandra Sconamiglio, which is coordinator of the Sustainable Agrivoltaic Task Force at Enea, which is an Italian agricultural network, and Leonardo Botti, which is managing director for the CNI segment at FIMER. So, to all of you, welcome. For the next 45 minutes, our audience expects us to tell them a bit more about our best practice, about agri-solar, and about how we can further contribute to structuring this exciting business model. So maybe I will start directly with you, Eva, as the chairwoman of our workstream. You have the honor of introducing the topic to our audience. And maybe I would like to ask you a bit. Amaranco has been indeed leading our work in the past 2 years in the task force. We have started with a briefing on agri-solar business models. This year, we publish our first best practices guide. Could you tell us why it matters for the sector?
Yes, thank you, Aurélie. Hello, everyone. Indeed, agri-solar market has a huge potential of growth, and as expectations are strong, we need to bring guarantees and to establish a minimum standards and quality requirement to ensure that agri-solar installations are developed correctly. This means that we need to deepen the cooperation between solar developers, farmers, and policymakers, fostering trust to ensure win-win project for farmers, solar developers, and territories. From the very beginning, Amaranco insisted to have a holistic approach by integrating agricultural, energetical, environmental, social, economic, and territory interests that are all converging in agri-solar projects. As we started the workstream with the European Green Deal, it was obvious that we should embrace this dynamic and position our work as participating to this green orientation across all activities in Europe. Agriculture and energy are crucial, and more than ever must embrace it. So what we try to do with these best practices guidelines is to propose an indicative framework to ensure correct development of the agri-solar sector, preserving the good projects that are already developed for years, avoiding the bad ones, and supporting the trends and innovation that are very interesting for the future of the sector.
Thank you, Eva. So to all of you in the audience, feel free already to have a look at this great best practices guide. Now let's maybe dig a bit deeper into the uses of it and how it can answer concrete challenges that we might face on the ground. I will start with you, Alessandra. Eva mentioned in her intro remark the need to build trust with policymakers in particular. From Italy to Brussels, do you face actually similar challenges with your governments? Do you feel you have to convince policymakers that agri-solar is actually an important solution?
Yes, sorry, we do have the same feeling. Maybe I should introduce also the special condition of Italy, as Italy is a country where the cultural conservation is very strong. We hold 55 UNESCO sites. So together with China, we are holding the highest number of heritage sites worldwide. And this generates a condition where whatever is the technological innovation, this is perceived as a kind of threat for the landscape and the land preservation. So we have very ambitious energy targets, especially related with photovoltaics. There is a forecast of increasing 30 gigawatt peak of photovoltaics by 2030. But anyhow, we have many projects which are stuck in the authorization process because still large-scale photovoltaics is perceived as not compatible, let's say, with the landscape. We have a past experience for photovoltaic greenhouses, which were funded with the highest feed-in tariff in Italy as the BIPV systems. And in the end, they revealed to be something like boxes with no vegetation inside. So there is this kind of, negative attitude towards agrivoltaics because it is perceived as a kind of a camouflage of photovoltaics. So I think it's very important to overcome this kind of vision where energy transition is perceived in opposition with the landscape and land preservation. And to do so, it is very important to build up something which can be an agreement among different stakeholders. For this reason, in Enea, we launched the first national network, an Italian national network for sustainable agrivoltaics, because we have the feeling that some systems which are presented as agrivoltaics in the absence of a clear definition are just photovoltaics on ground with a bit of vegetation inside. And of course, this does not contribute to build up trust in this approach and technology. So in our network, we have subjects coming from the institutions, but also from the academy, from the research field, and also, of course, the developers. So we are trying to build up this trust to penetrate a kind of barrier that we still have.
Thank you, Alessandra. So maybe I will go directly to Leonardo, because I think you mentioned the notion of camouflage and those agrivoltaic installations that may look at the end of the day like a regular ground mounted. I remember even ourselves at SolarPower Europe, we met with the government, I will not name today here, but which asked us, but are we talking about real agri-solar or just a regular installation with dead chicken below? And that's a true experience we had also with the government. So looking at you, Leonardo, it seems that the industry itself is not fully innocent, because maybe there was indeed some practices in the past that might have been detrimental to the trust in this specific business model. Can you tell us a bit about this history maybe, and how has our market, our technology changed? Is it different today?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Yeah, indeed, we are living now the second era of the photovoltaic technology. And coming to what you said exactly, Aurélie, the history and what Alessandra also mentioned, we have an history, especially the ones built around 10, 15 years ago, when pretty much in Europe, in all the countries in Europe at that time, thanks to the tariffs, thanks to the drug model, which was at that time flowing, I would say, there have been opportunities, and this is a part of our life. When there are opportunities, when there are possibilities to find out the right, or let's say the shorter way, the shortcuts to go to certain results, unfortunately, the human being, it's very, I would say, expert in doing that. For this reason, What happened 10 years ago? We had the opportunity to use this new technology, which was really innovative at the time, very expensive, and not yet mature. And there have been a lot of supports, a lot of incentives, plans to find out the way to grow in that industry, in that business. And it happened. It happened for sure, but unfortunately, it happened in a way that other aspects, which were more related to the I would say to the environmental, to the other opportunities which are supposed to be, I would say, part of the energy pipeline, were not properly considered in the right manner, as instead we need to. Now we are living, as I said, the second era, and today the technology, the business model, even the policymakers, all the organizations have already, I would say, understood what happened so far and what it has to be changed in the future. Actually, it changed already. If we look in the whole renewable energy segment at the moment, there are less and less speculations as we had 10 years ago, which is good. The technology now is mature. There are opportunities very well spread around the globe in all the different countries, in all the different territories. We have I would say, the possibility to install renewables, particularly solar, in literally every possible conditions. We have installations in the pole, we have installation in the deserts, and the understanding and the attention, the care, I would say, to the environment, it changed a lot so far. For this reason, now we have the right technologies to make sure that this trust will be again rebuilt, and I think he's already rebuilt it. And that is why there is more and more attention to really the right chemistry between, for instance, agriculture and renewable energies.
Thank you, Leonardo. Very, very reassuring indeed. The technology having evolved also significantly. I think we will dive also a bit later in the sustainable agricultural concept, which I think is a very nice notion, which has been introduced in this report and takes exactly what we just discussed. I mean, forcing our companies or making sure that they are abiding by principles and also practices in their installations, which avoids this kind of unfortunate experiences to reiterate themselves. But maybe just to finish the panorama when it comes to building trust, we've spoken about policymakers, we've spoken about governments. The other end of the whole agricultural, I would say, fora is the farmer. Obviously, he is our most direct interlocutor. So maybe looking at you, Anna, from Australia, do you see also building trust with farmers as an issue? It could be counterintuitive because from our side, we're like, obviously they're going to make money with it. It's going to support growing their crops. Is that so easy, or do you also need to work on this? And what have you done in Australia?
Thanks, Aurelie, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. Look, absolutely, partnership and trust with farmers is critical to the success of the clean energy transition. Without farmers, we can't do this. Simply 95%, if not higher, of Australia's clean energy, certainly at the utility scale, is in regional communities, farming communities, and so it's critical that we are working together with these communities, and we're always, I suppose, any form of development is always going to suffer to some degree from people not liking change, and that's hard, and it needs to be managed. But I think agri-solar is so exciting because it is an opportunity for us to strengthen the way that we partner with regional and rural communities in the clean energy transition. So just as a little bit of context about the Australian transition, Aurelie, it really took off, large-scale solar really took off in Australia in about 2016, and as of last year, it was about half of all of the utility scale renewables that were deployed. So we deployed about 2 gigawatts last year in Australia, and I know it's a massive land space, so maybe that doesn't sound very much. We're a relatively small population though, 25 million, and solar is relatively new. Wind's quite mature in our market, but solar has a denser footprint, and so I think we've had to think about how we engage with communities about solar being deployed. It is wind has been often considered to be more compatible with farming, because you can continue to carry on and go about your usual agricultural activities around the turbines that have a much smaller footprint. So there's been some real concerns in quite a number of Australian regional communities about solar, and particularly among farming groups. And so we've been working quite heavily over the course of the last 2 to 3 years now with those farming groups. And one of the commitments that we have made as an industry is that we will minimise our impacts on highly productive agricultural land, and that we will actively explore opportunities for agricultural integration within solar farm developments. And we followed that up in March of this year by releasing an Agri-Solar Guide for Australia. This is it, if anyone can see it. It's on our website. I know the SolarPower Europe one is more relevant, more exciting, and it's shinier, definitely. We put this one out. It's very much aimed at the Australian market. It's got a heavy focus on solar grazing, which is really the predominant form of agri-solar for utility scale developments. But we've also taken the best of what we know from projects and studies and organisations like yourselves, and solar grazing in the United States, Fraunhofer, a whole range of organisations that have been doing some great work in these areas, and brought it together to consolidate some insights and to provide some inspiration for the industry here, and also for farmers as well, to look at some opportunities where they can better collaborate in these projects. So that's probably enough for me, Aurelie.
Thank you, Anna. I mean, don't worry. I don't think we have enough guides on agri-solar, and we've been also very happy to contribute also to your great work on this aspect. Alessandra, I mean, you have also, on the Italian side, pioneered a bit this network on sustainable agriculture, together with farmers, together with policymakers, industry. Can you maybe tell us a bit about that from your perspective? Also, what are the challenges faced by farmers, and how your network is ambitioning to solution those challenges?
Yes, I should say that our network is really very young. So I think there is still a lot of work to do together with farmers and other stakeholders. So for now, we have already on board an association which is very important, Confagricoltura, which is supporting agrivoltaic solutions, because they see a kind of win-win solution, but also they see agrivoltaics as a possibility for also making farms more innovative, to have a kind of a continuous balance along the year, which could be worse in bad seasons if there is no control of the agricultural systems. There is a perception that at least in this first phase, some investments are needed, and maybe some fundings for these investments from the farmer's point of view. We have also other associations which are from the agronomic perspective. And from this point of view, again, we come back to the issue of building up a trust into this technology. So it's very important to show that it's real, that agriculture can take place in the space in between the mothers. I think there is also a difference between big and small farmers. So we see that there is a kind of suspect against the large scale photovoltaics, because in general, these investments are proposed by, let's say, PV people. And there are other farmers which have different perspectives, so small scale farmers. So I think it's very important to develop very appropriate business models which can take into account the different specificities of the farmers' conditions. So we hope we can go ahead again, collecting all the inputs, connecting them into a vision that can be sustainable from also the farmer's point of view.
Thank you. Looking forward to see then how your network is going to grow further and to propose new ways of collaborating together. Maybe I will go back then to our chairwoman now, Eva, because we've heard a lot of things. We've heard camouflage practices back in the days on the side of the industry. We've heard about mistrust sometimes with farming community, really this worry, this concern that developing agri-solar has also to go hand in hand with supporting the sustainability of the agricultural installation. And that is where I think the concept which you have introduced in our best practice guideline, the concept of sustainable agricultural concept, SAC, is very interesting. Can you tell us a bit how the introduction of this concept in the guideline proposes an answer to those challenges?
Yes, I think it's really closely linked to what Alessandra just underlined. What we observe is farmers are facing major challenge with climate change right now. We also observe that they have always offered ecological services to the community, and it is important that they can have recognition and support for that. Also, I can say that sustainability is at the core of solar energy, and it seems natural to us that the collaboration between the PV and agricultural sectors brings about sustainable solution. So this SAC, Sustainable Agricultural Concept, has been introduced in this best practices guideline as a key step in the planning phase, mostly, of an agri-solar project. The SAC captures what the market is today and defines accordingly with an agri-solar project should be at a minimum an agricultural project, first and foremost, and then which is complemented by a solar PV installation that generates clean electricity. But the SAC also is an opportunity of all parties involved to minimize the environmental and socio-economical impacts of the project. It's what we brought with EPC and OEM best practices in the guide. And furthermore, we also underline a space for agri-solar project developer to plan how to maximize those synergies between the solar PV system and the agricultural production, and provide additional environmental and socio-economic benefits, such as protecting biodiversity or the establishment of local renewable and agricultural communities. So we can go from a minimum standard and maximize to a really integrated system and maximize the synergies with a very positive impact on the environment and socio-economic system.
Great. So it's actually combining, I would say, kind of hard requirements as a basis. What should be the minimum level of quality we should expect from such an installation, which is already a very good, I think, coverage. And then you have kind of the pioneering practices. So if you really want to lead the way and put the cherry on top, that is the kind of practices which you need to look at. Are there some reactions actually from our panelists on this sustainable agricultural concept? I would like to talk a bit about innovation later on, but maybe on this specific aspect, which is very important. Any reactions?
You know, the technology, I think, is ready, and from the industry standpoint, for sure, that is the way forward. I believe the full industry is convinced about that. All
right. So for you, it's already a no-brainer to actually implement those guidelines. All right. Thanks a lot. Then, yes.
From my point of view, these guidelines and this concept in particular is very important, because on one side we have developers who have to propose projects and need the guidelines. On the other side, we have the authorization bodies that don't know how to proceed because they don't know what are the criteria to take into account or the key performance indicators. So I really think that this method that you developed is very well done, because it's easy. And it's very important that it starts from a kind of minimal condition to go upper and upper, because of course the conditions, the external conditions, I mean the landscape, the socio-economical conditions, the purpose of the project can be very different. And I think based on this scheme with some specific quality objectives, it's really possible to build up a decision-making tool which is very useful both for the developers and for the decision makers.
Thank you, Alessandra. I think that was indeed really the ambition as well, looking at, for example, I mean, as you pointed out, then if you're a member state looking at how to support agri-PV, how do you, for example, design your tenders? What are the kinds of frameworks which you should put in place? And in those guidelines could also form a bit of a guide to policymakers on top of those industry players on how to also further develop those models. Going to the next topic, which I wanted to touch upon with you, which is a bit the link with what we just discussed, kind of harmonizing, putting in place some requirements, and innovation, because we are actually talking about a business model which is extremely innovative. So the agri-solar workstream in our own association is only 2 years old. It's very young, and it was launched also with the strong support of Amaranco and with you, Eva. Leonardo, looking at the technology also from a company perspective, can you tell us how innovative it is? What technologies are we looking at? I mean, how do you see the evolution of this technology in the next years as well?
Yeah, you know, the pictures here are already representing all the different aspects where the innovation has already made a lot of steps forwards. For example, the innovation is already, I would say, implemented and already available for all the structure. Just to give you, you know, coming to the pictures which we are seeing here. So far, we didn't have infrastructure or metal structures capable to allow this kind of integration between the panels and all the other related components and the, you know, vegetables or cereals or all the other cultivations which we can get below the panels. At the same time, with the current tracker capabilities, we have the opportunity to have structures which are much more smart than you know, 10 years ago, capable to manage properly all the different edges of the you know, of the fields which we need to cover. And panels, we have a lot of different technologies, bifacial modules, which are glass to glass, which are really allowing both the opportunity to capture properly the energy and the opportunity also the capability to transmit or to defer to the ground the right quantity of light, the right quantity of sun and color. At the same time, you know, coming more to our industry, the electronic industry, the inverters and the power converters, also those ones have been already adopted all the potential, I would say, new topologies and technologies which can allow today, thanks to the digitalization, which can allow today a proper integration versus the network, a capability to control the energy flow and to allow self-consumption, where, for instance, we are using the renewable installations in, for example, buildings, which could be, you know, buildings in the farm or buildings where we have animals, for example. And in that sense, we had the opportunity to control the energy flow, to allow the full, I would say, capabilities of the farmer to be really the prosumer, meaning consume the energy, but at the same time sell the energy or provide the energy to somebody else. Those are just some example of the innovations which have been implemented. More and more today, we listen, you know, the very famous acronym DARE, you know, distributed energy resource. This today is possible. This today is affordable, and the industry is already capable today to manage properly the interaction, the smart interaction and the integration between the network, which could be a high voltage, medium voltage, or low voltage level, to the installations which is in the ground.
Thank you, Leonardo. I like also the idea, especially with agri-solar, that actually it's the constraint. It's the constraint that really drove the innovation in this business model. But like those plants that only grow is very hard or tough to deal with areas and thereby are also resistant. This business model is also the result of really our sector collaborating with the stakeholders to understand their constraint and really try to innovate to match them. But thanks a lot for this overview. Indeed, in the guide, we have also a bit tried to lay down those innovative business models. But going back to you, Eva, a bit of question, because it could sound counterintuitive. On the one hand, we have a business model which is super innovative, which in 2 years has already shown great progress. On the other hand, we're trying to put in place a little bit of order into that. And I remember in our workstream, it was a big debate which you had to manage. I mean, what is the right balance to strike between harmonization/standardization and innovation? How do you think those two can go hand in hand?
I think what we try to bring together is the fact that agricultural and solar sector work together for years. Even if it was not always successful project, it's not. We have a lot of actors that are already experienced and knowledge in working with a cross-sector approach. So all over the years, we know better the farmer, their need, and it's easier to us to build and to develop the good solution with them. So we are not starting from scratch. We have already an experience on that, and we try to build about that from that. We also put in the guide indeed some pilots that are already implemented in Europe, different kind of innovation. Some of them have been developed for years now with very scientific research center with strong collection of data. Mostly one of at the core of the innovation at the management of the light distribution. As we can see on this picture, two solutions that are developed, dynamic system and semi-transparent panel. That could be the new revolution, new generation of European panel if we want really to invest in this kind of innovation with a good material for infrastructure, etc. We can really adapt all the system, starting from a very classical PV system and really adapting it to the agricultural sector and needs. And also, so light distribution, and we can see we were finishing the guide, and there was this very interesting also experience reintroducing agriculture in PV installation already there for a while, and we can see we can still be smart in this cross-sector approach and the solution we can bring together.
Thank you, Eva. Maybe also taking the question upside down to you, but also to Leonardo. Is today the lack of definition of agri-solar an issue to develop the market? And maybe then Anna and Alessandra, you can tell us a bit of how this approach of defining the business model is being done in your countries. But first, Eva, Leonardo, is it a problem today that some countries don't have a definition or they don't have the same one? Who wants to start?
You are touching the sensitive point here, because definition is right in the middle of a lot of conversation and discussion. I know particularly in France and Germany, which are already developing some standards in those countries. But I think based on what I say, the knowledge we already have and the experience of some actors, those countries are about to bring a definition and standards associated. We just have the thought also that it could be difficult. We have this discussion in our workstream to define EU standards because in fact the agricultural policy approaches and climatic conditions are really different in different areas in Europe. So, but we definitely should learn from countries that are working and investing in this sector and in developing standards. And find a minimum of harmonization between all of countries. This will help sharing knowledge, and it will help to develop the sector correctly and make it an important one.
Thank you, Eva. Maybe because the time is running out, it's really flying. So just to keep enough time for our last sections, I just would like to keep asking very quickly to Anna and Alessandra to tell us very short replies. Do you have a definition of agri-solar in your country? Does it have specificities to your own geographical zone? Two very quick questions. Maybe Anna, you want to start?
My answer is no. Well, that's probably a bit brief, but let me just say, yes, we've got a definition. It's very broad. I think we're at such an embryonic stage of our industry, of the agri-solar journey in Australia, that we haven't really got to the point of worrying too much about the details of how it's defined. We're just focused on practical delivery and responses.
Do you think it's good or bad?
I'm just interested in trying to get as many people to explore the opportunities without probably getting too hung up about how we define it at this stage.
All right, that's a fair answer. Thanks, Anna. What about you, Alessandra?
So my reply is strange because actually we don't have a definition, but since a few days we have agri-solar in our recovery plan. So yes, agri-solar is in, and at the moment it includes two investments. One is on a so-called Parco Agrisolare, which is kind of agri-solar park, but it mainly refers to existing buildings which are renovated, so the envelope is improved by means of replacement of materials such as asbestos with new and ecological materials. And the other one is the one that is pertinent to PV on ground, because it's specifically related to the increase of the amount of PV in Italy. In this case, the investment is 1.1 billion. And actually there is no definition, but the investment mentions some points which maybe will become kind of parameters for the assessment of these systems. For instance, we know that the system should be monitored and the synergies between agriculture and PV should be demonstrated. There is also some reference to climate resilience, to climate change, and other ones, but still there is no definition, but we have a framework at least.
Okay, that's interesting. So indeed, I mean, in the Italian recovery plan, there was this big announcement. A lot of money is going to be poured into agri-solar. So indeed, maybe the guide will help the Italian government best identify actually what type of business model we would be looking at. There is a little question from the audience, which I think is still worth exploring. Very fast reply from you, maybe Eva. Some people are asking, agri-solar was developed for many years in other regions of the world. How come it's only coming to Europe today?
Wow.
Eva, Leonardo?
Okay.
Anyone? Why?
From my side, I believe it's not really something which is coming today. We mentioned before, probably the opportunity to get photovoltaic projects linked with agriculture were already available in the past. It was just misused a bit, I believe.
So maybe yes, this moment
and
of lack
we
of
also
we
also underline, if you read the best practices guide, that there is a lot of already practices, case studies in Europe. So I'm not sure we are late. I know that there is quite good development in Asia, for example, in Japan, and maybe there is more support of the policymaker, and this is what we are now asking for European countries.
Thank you. I hope there are governments and EU officials listening to us as we speak. Going maybe to the next topic, which is also quite importantly raised also in the Q&As from the audience, the link with climate mitigation. Maybe going to you, Anna. Australia has been really much under the spotlight in the past month, and sorry for pointing that, but indeed having extreme climate events. On the other hand, sometimes quite conservative general governments or policies about climate change. Do you see climate change today becoming a driver for agri-solar? Just to everyone, keeping your replies sharp as we are reaching the end soon of the panel.
Yeah, brief answer from me, Aurelie. I think, look, we've certainly had our fair share of extreme events lately. I think the world sat in horror looking at our bushfires last year. And I think, some of these extreme events, we're quite accustomed to extreme events, but they are going to most certainly get worse. I don't think that climate change has probably been a principal driver yet for the application of agri-solar in Australia. It's really been what you talked about earlier, that win-win scenario for the farmer and the proponent, a bit of both get some benefit out of it. In Australia, for solar grazing, for example, there's actually not even any payment that goes either way. The farmer benefits from access to the land. They get benefit from better moisture in the soils and better pastures and protection for predators. So there's a range, and the weather protection for sheep, for example, in solar grazing situations. And the proponent gets access to, or gets the benefit of, stronger partnership with a local farmer or farmers, from the free mowing, free lawn cutting, and just general greater involvement from the local community in the project. So there's some benefits in that way. The newer forms of applications for the Australian market, the sort of ones that we have in front of us in this slide, elevated PV arrays for viticulture and horticulture, they will be driven, I think, to a greater extent by climate change and by the interest in mitigating the effects on food production. And in fact, we are seeing some producers, and we've got a research facility here in Victoria, the state of Victoria where I live, which is experimenting with elevated PV to see if it will improve the quality of apples, of pears that can be sold, and that's partly from protecting them from the elements, etc.
Thank you, Anna. So actually, I take it that it's not necessarily a key driver, but actually that's almost good news, because what I get from what you say is that the driver has basically been that it's a win-win solution. So that's almost a good highlight to listen to. Leonardo, you have a project that maybe you wanted to share with us very quickly to show us concretely how AgriSolar can actually support the fight against climate change. I have a lot of questions in the audience about flooding areas and AgriSolar. I don't know if you can take it up right after, but in 1 minute shortly, what can you tell us about this project?
Yeah, this project is a very nice one. It comes from Asia, from Taiwan, where there are already many opportunities and applications similar to that one, where in a nutshell, the cover, or let's say the roof of the fish farms are going to be, I would say, executed with solar panels. And there are a lot of benefits from this kind of installation, because there is the opportunity to use straightforward the energy in the pumps and in all the other tools which are necessary to feed properly all the fishes. And at the same time, there is another benefit which is very funny, but which I learned on the time being, which is the protection that the small fishes are getting from the birds. Because typically, and this is something which I was not even imagining, but it seems that one of the major problems for the fish farmers are related to the to the big birds, which are always available, especially near the sea, and they are always coming, shocking the small fishes and creating a lot of problems to the farmers. Now, with this coverage, which are in any case leaving the sun to get down, the possibility to get the right heat to the water, but at the same time not to create too much heat, which is also creating the evaporation phenomena, they are also allowing the fishes to grow easier and better, because the birds are not coming down and are not hitting them. It's funny, but it's the reality.
Thank you. It's funny indeed, but it's also interesting to see how it can actually demultiply potential benefits, from the birds to avoiding the evaporation of water in some regions which are very hot. I think it's also valid for regular floating PV, but that's indeed going to be probably very interesting in the next years. All right, we have 1 minute to go. Maybe I'll take a little bit more, but not too much. Otherwise, the events team will probably not let me leave much longer. But maybe to close that, in 2020, we have been producing, together with you, Eva, in our workstream, the Agri-PV briefing, which was looking at all the various business models for this exciting sector. In 2021, we have worked hard to deliver those best practices guidelines, which try to put a bit of order and good practices to support our sector in its growth. What do you think we should be doing for 2022? Quick reply from all of you, and I will take you in the order as I see you. So, Leonardo.
Okay. Yeah, from my side, from my point of view, we need to continue this activity, especially, continuing the support and the interaction with the policymakers and with all the authorities For instance, in Europe, where we have always different, I would say, regulations, we need to come more and more to something which is standard or standardized as much as possible. And I strongly believe that the activity done so far will continue and will really bring the right value to this opportunity, which is very important and relevant for all of us.
Thank you, Leonardo. Alessandra, I think you have a slide as well to support our 2022 program.
So I think the 2022 program is showing very good examples of sustainable agrivoltaics. I think if you're looking at the slide which I presented, I think from my point of view, I'm an architect. So I think it's the first time that we can break the box, considering a technology, just a technology as a kind of object that it's just put somewhere and this is only technology. We can transform it into a spatial system where the space, so the space in between the modules where life happens matters, people matter. And I think this is really a huge challenge that we should face in 2022, showing that it's possible and it can also be beautiful and sustainable.
So furthering collaboration, working with people. Sorry, I think the slide is not showing, but you explained it very well. Anna, what about you?
Look, for us, agri-solar is in its, as I said, embryonic stages, and I think my priority in the Australian industry is really about communicating and promoting the benefits, making people more aware, making proponents of projects aware, making farmers aware of the opportunities and encouraging them to try it, take a risk. We must be honest that this takes a little bit, it's harder, it's more challenging probably, particularly for project proponents. So there's a bit of a risk involved, and so I'll also be talking to governments about how they might be able to support demonstration projects and help farmers and proponents take the plunge and give this a go.
All right, thank you, Anna. Eva, as our chairwoman, then what do you take up for our next work program? I think we still have quite some work to do, no?
Yes, but I will just mention two things I think very important. We will, I hope, increase and strengthen our relationship with Farmers Association and agricultural industry. This is very important to continue to work closely together and increase those collaboration. And second things, we will spread this work through the EU and national policymakers to work with them for the development of agri-solar business model all over Europe, especially with south of Europe, where we know that climatic conditions are really severe and damaging a lot of crops and livestock.
Thank you, Eva, and thank you all really for the great conversation. It was a pleasure to moderate it. Of course, I would have liked us to spend much more time together because there are so many dimensions to explore when we discuss about agri-solar. That's probably the same for you on the other side, our dear audience. Are you frustrated? Good. Then you will have a look at our best practices guide during the next minutes if you would like to hear even more about it. And to all our panelists, once again, thank you so much. To our audience, well, that's time for a lunch break. You might not all have the pleasure of having solar-powered food, but at least take a bit of a break in order to come back to us full of energy. And I will see you back at 1:30. Thanks, everyone.